before I start my sermon, Menachem Begin was my hero growing up because my Hebrew name is Menachem and my last name is Werbin. So it sounds almost the same, and I was so proud that the Prime Minister had almost the same name as myself. So, Rishut Rav, with the permission of the Rabbi, would like to start wishing you Good Yontef. I really hope the fast is going well so far. I wanted to start my sermon today by telling you about my personal story. Being the new rabbi gives me the possibility to tell you about my family and me. And you can get to know me a little bit better, a little bit more about us. As you may hear, I was born and raised in Brooklyn, New York. I don't know where you're laughing, but anyway. Well, not really. In Buenos Aires, Argentina, where my wife and I grew up. We moved to the US in 2008 after living in Israel for 2 years and 5 years in Colombia, South America. And then when we moved to the US, we lived 7 years in Roanoke, Virginia. And then we moved to Bethesda. We have been in this area more than 6 years now. And I have the feeling I have not explored yet all the possibilities this area offers. Or in other words, we did not tour the beautiful places that DC, Virginia, Maryland, and other close states can offer. Basically, I have been to a couple of Whole Foods, Giant, some Trader Joe's, and Costco. With 4 kids, you may imagine we welcomed the arrival of Instacart and adopted it as a new member of our family. One Sunday, about a month and a half ago, while our 2 older kids were at Camp Ramah in New England, in Massachusetts, Patricia, my wife, and I, and our 2 younger kids decided to grab our passports and went all the way to Annapolis. It was a beautiful day. We haven't been there before. After 6 years, it was time, and we decided to explore beyond the Beltway. We enjoyed our walk in Annapolis. We took pictures, learned about the city, and suddenly I surprised my wife and my kids when I offered them to go on a boat. Now you want to know, I love going into boats, yes? Well, not really, not at all. The truth is I am very scared of boats. So there were 2 options, a small boat and a large one. Guess which one I choose? The cheapest one. No, for sure, I felt much safer in the largest, in the biggest ship. We embarked the boat, went to the top floor, and sat down waiting for the captain to depart. Those 5 minutes that we wait were endless for me. When the captain decided to depart, I was already dizzy. To make a long story short, lots of prayers, more dizziness, a couple of times asking myself, why did you decide to buy the tickets? And finally, back to the dock where we went back to safe and firm land, Baruch Hashem. I'm here today, so that's a proof. But I have not told you the most important part of the story. When we were about to depart, the captain offered lifesavers to the passengers. All but one rejected it. No, it was not me. It was another gentleman who sat in the back and accepted the life jacket. I happened to be next to this person when we arrived and we were about to leave the boat. When the sailors asked him to return the life jacket, this was his answer. This was my lifesaver when I was in danger. Please let me appreciate it a little more. He left the boat, took off the life jacket, looked at it, and looked at the sailors and said, "Thank you." Then he returned it. At that moment, I knew I had my sermon for Yom Kippur. Not only because it reminded me of the story of Jonah, but also because the whole story encompassed the message of this holy day. Aren't we here tonight to say thank you to our lifesaver, Aren't we here to show appreciation to God for the year that passed? Aren't we here tonight to share our deepest fears and our greatest hopes? Aren't we together as a congregation on the same boat? I would like to share with you a story about Israel and boats. We all heard about the great accomplishments and missions of Israel, like the rescue at Entebbe, the Six-Day War, destroying nuclear Iraq, and many more. Few people may have heard about the Cherbourg boats. Yes, the Cherbourg boats. Anybody knows about them? Raise your hand. I said few people, so I was right. Believe it or not, the Israeli intelligence stole from France 5 boats. Those boats belonged to Israel, but France had an embargo on Israel. The year was 1969. The boats have been manufactured already for Israel. Israel paid for them, but French President Charles de Gaulle imposed an embargo on Israel. Israel was not going to sit down with crossed arms, and secretly it was decided that the boats would be extracted on Christmas Eve, 1969, when alertness of harbor security would be minimal. A secret mission was set. Israeli sailors went clandestinely into France. Meanwhile, Israel staked out a 3,000-kilometer escape route, with commercial ships posted along the Mediterranean Sea as backups to refuel and support. Everything was ready for the dangerous operation. The commander of the boats in Cherbourg, Captain Hadar Kimchi, planned to cast off the Cherbourg's residents, as the Cherbourg residents were having their Christmas Eve dinner. But, as you may imagine, a storm didn't let that happen. Finally, at 2 a.m., when the BBC reported the wind shifting from west to northwest, and nobody was paying attention, the Israeli sailors left the port in a matter of minutes. The boats moved through towering seas and at times lost each other, but all joined up off the coast of Portugal. Because of Christmas, the ability of the sailors, and the Yiddish kop, the boat's departure was noticed only 2 days later, when the boats were almost in Israel's shore. What an amazing story of our people. I love this story. When I first heard the story, I focused on how amazing it was that they rescued the boats. But when I thought a little bit more in depth about it, I thought about how terrifying this must have been to carry out this mission in the middle of the sea. For me, the most scariest part of the trip of Annapolis was when the captain turned off the engines in the middle of the bay. Think about that. Think about this in your own life. Most of the time, we are with our engines running. We never have them off. When the week becomes stressful, when we need 3 more hours in the day to accomplish something, when we have our engines running, are we really ourselves? Or is it in this moment, in a moment like tonight, when we can search in the endless sea of our soul who we really are? Yom Kippur turns off the engines and makes us feel that even though we are afloat, we are vulnerable, fragile, and breakable. This is how we are and who we are. The Talmud teaches about this as well. In the Tractate of Yemamot 121a, there is a short story that I would like to share with you. Rabban Gamliel tells us that he was once traveling on a boat and saw another boat that broke and started to sink. He was devastated. He knew Rabbi Akiva, his favorite student, was in that boat, in the boat that broke. When Rabban Gamliel arrived to a safe port, he went back to the yeshiva, to the house of study. To his surprise, Rabbi Akiva was teaching a class about Jewish law, about halacha. Rabbi Gamliel couldn't believe his eyes, and he asked, Akiva, my son, who brought you up? How do you save your life? Akiva answered, a plank from the boat that broke came my way. I embraced it, and I was able to float. And every wave and wave that came, I was able to overcome. Both sages, Rabban Gamliel and his student Rabbi Akiva, represent each of us today. We are Rabban Gamliel and we are Rabbi Akiva. We are Rabban Gamliel. Something breaks in Gamliel when he finds himself unable to avoid his students' imminent tragedy. We also know that sense, that feeling of loss and helplessness. We felt the loss when we are not able to attend a funeral and say goodbye to a loved one. We were Gamliel when we saw someone going into depression, sinking, and the distance was too immense, and we couldn't be of help. We're in the middle of this pandemic trying to find ways to help, and many times unable to do so. We're also Rabbi Akiva. When Akiva grabs the plank, he's making peace with the brokenness that surrounds him. The shattered pieces of the sunken boat became his way out of the storm. When wholeness was no longer an option, Akiva taught us that we can hold off dry land by embracing what is broken in the sea of our despair. We're Akiva grabbing broken pieces and making them tools of salvation. Taking up every wave, first wave, second wave, new waves. Keeping our heads above them, first COVID wave, second COVID wave. We continue trying to keep our heads above them. And Yom Kippur is the day when we are teacher and student, Gamliel and Akiva, we share our deepest fears and our greatest hopes. We're here to appreciate the lifesavers in our lives. Life jackets we wear every day and we forget that they keep us alive. This magical night brings memories and expectations, storms and calm waters. There is one last message I want to share with you tonight. When I embarked on that boat with my wife and kids, I didn't know the name of the captain, nor his or her age, neither his or her gender. I didn't know anything about the captain. I only had faith that the captain was going to take me to a safe place. That is it. It is about faith. The same faith that moved the Israeli Navy to rescue the boats when the mission looked impossible. The same faith that kept Rabbi Akiva surfing the waves. As it happened with the captain, we don't know God's name, neither God's age or gender. It is about faith. The only thing I know is that the captain will take me to a safe place. May God take us all to a safe port. May we all be sealed in the book of life. Gmar Chatima Tova.